name is Mike, and this happened to me last week. I live in an amazing 2-story house on a dock where I can go fishing. I mostly love fishing because it's peaceful and I love seeing the sunset. I went on my fishing dock and started to fish. I was having an awesome time catching catfish, but this is when the story gets creepy. All of a sudden, I hear footsteps coming from behind me. I turned around to see who it is, and it was a man. The guy had long, greasy hair with big brown eyes, wearing jeans with a plain white shirt, and he had a backpack. He was also carrying a fishing pole in his hand. I was also mad confused because he was trespassing on another person's dock. A normal thing to do is just tell him, hey, you're not supposed to trespass, or hey, you're breaking a rule. But I thought about being nice and maybe he needed something. I tried to stay calm and act normal, but that's when I saw him sit down like he didn't even know he was breaking a rule. That's when I thought about talking to him. I started a conversation saying, nice day out here, isn't it? He replied, absolutely. He then asked me what my name was, and I replied to him saying, my name is Mike, what's your name? All of a sudden, instead of him answering back my simple reply, he made a joke with my name. He said, have you heard of Mike and Ike? He then started hysterically laughing. That's when I got super triggered and asked him back, have you heard of trespassing? That's when he stopped laughing and gave me the most triggered look I've ever seen. He then started to pull his bait out of his backpack, and that's when my heart dropped. With the corner of my eye, he was putting on a human finger for bait. He then casted the pole, and then asked me, can you watch my stuff while I go grab some other things at my house real quick? I replied to him saying, sure, no problem, like I haven't even noticed the finger he pulled out. About 30 minutes later, he was still gone, and that's when I decided to do something I regret to this day. Out of my curiosity, I looked in the backpack to see what he packed, and that's when I ran back in my house. In the backpack was 2 eyeballs, 2 ears, and 9 fingers. The 10th finger is the one he casted in the water, so that's how I knew it was a human. I called the police telling them everything. The police came immediately and started investigating. They saw what I saw in the backpack. With the corner of my eye, I saw one of the policemen reeling in the pole he casted earlier. The finger on the hook was gone, but there was a note on the hook. The policemen gathered around me, and we all read it together. The note said, aren't you glad I didn't come back? This story is told from a female perspective. I've always loved kayak fishing during the day. Every time I got out on my kayak, I've always had a decent, good, normal time, but never a bad time until now. I was on my kayak doing my normal fishing when I came across this woman who was also on a kayak. She was wearing all white, and even her kayak was all white. She looked like she was living in the 1700s vibe. She came close to me and didn't say a word. It felt kind of unsettling. I broke the silence and said, so how's your day been? But all she did was turn her head to me, but didn't say anything. Now I was feeling uncomfortable, but then I thought maybe she doesn't speak English. So I asked her another question just to make sure. The second question I asked was, so where are you from? But she didn't say anything. All she did was she kept staring at me. After what felt like 30 minutes, I looked at her and she pointed at something, like she was replying to my question. She still didn't say anything, but I started to trace her finger to see where she was pointing to. She pointed at a house, but it wasn't just a house. It was my house. I then told her, hey, that's where I live. I then looked back at her, but there was nobody. I looked everywhere, but she vanished. I got super creeped out and kayaked as fast as I can until I got back to my house. I immediately reported it to the police and told them everything, what she looked like, what she was on, and what she did. The police came immediately and started questioning me on where she was. I told them everything that I experienced with her. Once the cops showed me a picture of her, one of the cops showed me a picture of her and asked, is this her? I immediately said yes, back to them. The cop smiled but kept a serious look at the same time and said, this woman died 15 years ago at this house and loves to go kayak fishing. I almost fainted hearing this because other people also reported her kayaking in the same white kayak in the same white dress. It turns out I lived with and talked with a ghost the entire time. I'm 15 now. This story happened to me when I was 12 years old. I live by a lake and I own a dock by my amazing looking 2-story house. My room is on the second floor where I have a window so I can easily see the amazing view of the lake. Here's where the story begins. It was about 2:30 a.m. and I woke up due to a nightmare I just had. Thank God the nightmare immediately left my mind, or else this story would be even longer. I looked around to see if I was okay and I noticed that it was like 2:39 in the morning. I tried several attempts on trying to go back to sleep, but it just wouldn't work. I gave up and got up from my bed and started to walk to my window. I looked to see the amazing view of the moon, but that's when something caught my eye. On the dock, there was a black silhouette that looked like he or she was fishing. I couldn't tell if it was a he or she because it was just too hard to identify. I then whispered to myself, "What is he or she doing on this dock?" That's when the figure reaches out its long arm and pointed at me like a sudden response. I got scared and went back to bed, and I somehow fell asleep. The next day, I looked out of my window on the dock to see if it was still there, but it was gone. I never saw the figure again, but I knew for a fact he or she wasn't trying to catch fish.